Artificial intelligence has become shorthand for a chatbot. For many people, AI begins and ends with a prompt box. Summarize this for me. Rewrite this for me. Generate an image of my dog playing a piano. Write this LinkedIn post for me. But beneath the surface, something far more consequential is happening. AI is moving into products, into networks, into operating systems, into the very infrastructure that powers how we connect, build, and decide. And the gap between what consumers think AI is and what enterprises are actually doing with it or planning to do with it is widening. And it's that tension that sits at the heart of this episode. Welcome to The Great Indoors, continuing season 11, where we explore what remains human in an increasingly optimized world, where we choose depth over noise, meaning over metrics, and lived experience over abstraction. I'm your host, Matthew Roberts from Amdocs, and as always, I'm joined by the charismatic producer, the one and only Larissa Yee. Today's guest returns for a second time. We first met Stephanie Ormston from AT&T a year ago in Barcelona, and we had an incredible conversation. So it's great to welcome her back on the show. And her perspective now feels even more important and urgent than it ever did 12 months ago in Barcelona. So Stephanie is the Vice President of New Product Introductions, Innovations for the consumer segment at AT&T. In her role, she leads the development of new products and value-added services that sit on top of AT&T's core connectivity platforms, from wireless to broadband, exploring what comes next in consumer innovation. Now, for the last decade at AT&T, Stephanie has held leadership roles across big data, privacy, data strategy, Internet of Things, network operations, and wholesale. And that breadth gives her a rare vantage point. She understands not just the promise of AI, but where it already lives inside complex organizations and enterprise systems. And in this conversation, we move beyond the hype cycle. We explore what vibe coding really means inside a product organization. We examine why AI must be framed around customer problems, not technical capability. And we ask whether the industry really learned anything from 5G's storytelling missteps, I think is the only fair way to summarize it, as it looks towards the future and 6G. And most importantly, we return to a simple but very powerful notion. And that is AI is more than ChatGPT. It's an accelerator, but humans are still at the steering wheel. So let's continue. Let's go. So welcome back to The Great Indoors, season 11. We have a great episode in store for you today. And actually, it goes all the way back to Barcelona in 2025, where we had a wonderful conversation with Stephanie Ormston from AT&T. And it was such a great conversation. I remember saying at the time, we have to get Stephanie back because it was a highlight of the show and season 10. So I'd like to welcome back for a second sitting on The Great Indoors from AT&T, Stephanie Ormston. Stephanie, how are you?
I'm doing so well, and I'm so happy to be back. Thank you for such a generous intro. I loved our conversation last year, and so much has changed, but so many of the themes are still very, very relevant. So happy to dig back in.
No, that's great. That's great. Now, it was interesting. Just as we were preparing there, I was remarking on how on how fast time seems to have moved since we last have spoken. But to your point there, a lot has happened in that time that we're going to get into. And that's why it's going to be great to catch up today. So for our listeners, Stephanie, give us a little bit of your bio, your history. We understand you have a new position at AT&T. So just give us the Stephanie story today, just to kick us off.
Well, great. Well, as you said, I have a new role. So recently started as the Assistant Vice President of New Product Innovation for the consumer business at AT&T. So basically anything that would run on top of our core connectivity, wireless, broadband, any additive features, value adds, the next big thing is going to come out of my group. No small charge, no small charter, but very, very exciting space to be in. So I've been in that role for about 6 or 7 months now, give or take. Prior to that, I was working on our wholesale space. So that's when we connected last in Barcelona. And then I've been with AT&T for about 12 years at this point, and I've had a number of different roles across big data, data strategy, privacy, Internet of Things, working within the network organization, as well as, again, in different parts of our company. So it's given me a really good broad perspective about the technological assets that AT&T has, as well as the ability to now bring them to bear in terms of customer experiences and expressions for customers that really add value.
Awesome. And congratulations. It sounds exciting. Really sounds exciting.
Thank you.
Yeah. So let's dive straight into it. I think with that introduction, with your new role, I'm going to start straight with the question that is burning in every conversation I have right now. So 12 months ago, when we spoke and we talked about AI, and literally every single conversation in my life, whether it's with my children, my wife, involves AI somewhere, right? And a year ago, the narrative was, you have to understand this, you have to embrace it. If you don't embrace it, you're going to fall behind. You need to get on top of it. The narrative has somewhat shifted, but not maybe from a corporate perspective, but certainly from a personal perspective, to a narrative that, are we getting lazy? Is this all AI slop? Has it become a homogenous monoculture? Are we abusing this technology in some regard? So what's your perspective on it, Stephanie? And then we'll talk about how it feeds into your everyday new role. But what's your general viewpoint on the AI narrative?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think you've captured it well in terms of what I would say kind of most of the conversations that I've been having with friends and family are at. There's a lot of skepticism around AI, and certainly we even see that in some of the customer research we do around this idea of, do I really want AI in my business? Do I really want it knowing things about me? And so I completely understand that, because most folks have only really been exposed to ChatGPT, and they really only understand some of the basic, I can use it to summarize an email or organize my thoughts or what have you. But I do believe that, and this is where it might get a little something that I think folks want to pay attention to, is the gap is widening, right? And so AI is so much more than just ChatGPT, but that's most folks' only awareness of what AI is. And so when you see some of the things that enterprises are starting to do with AI, when you see some of the things that's coming out of Anthropic, even coming out of OpenAI, Claude Code, Codex, all of these more advanced capabilities that are really, truly going to completely transform the way work gets done, I think it becomes almost dangerous when you have people say, oh, well, AI is just like an intern. AI is just slop. I don't want to use it. I don't need to pay attention. And I really want to make sure folks are paying more attention, because the advanced capabilities are moving so much faster. The more that gap widens, the farther we have to go to catch up, and the farther that we have to educate ourselves and each other as that disruption is coming, because it is coming.
I wrote that down. Maybe that is the title for this episode. It was just a simple but brilliant quote. AI is more than ChatGPT, right? And I think it is entirely. And one of the things I say to my team is, let's be AI curious. Let's not assume that one thing is what it's all about. And I think just events of the last 3 or 4 weeks have proven that it is a lot more than ChatGPT. So give me some examples of where you're using the different mechanisms from a personal productivity perspective, and also from as part of your day-to-day corporate responsibilities.
Yeah, absolutely. So from a personal productivity perspective, and what I am starting to see and understand and recommend to folks is get to know multiple models and get to know multiple tools. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach. Everybody's going to have kind of their own perspective and their own workflows, but I've got a couple of different ones that I use in my personal life, again, just to organize either creative endeavors or ideas, or thinking through even asking it for recommendations for things, or just trip planning, that's been my favorite one so far. I'm taking a trip in March, and I used my AI assistant to build out our trip itinerary and make recommendations for where to go, all of that. So there's a few simple things that I just use it for that's been really helpful to just save time and kind of take some of that mental load off my brain. Then on the corporate side, what's been really cool is seeing how the AI tools can start to accelerate product development. And where I sit within product development, I call it, we start with the back of the napkin. So we start with just the sketch of an idea or hey, what if we did this thing? And that can be very messy and very nebulous and hard to describe sometimes. And so the AI tools have become incredibly useful and incredibly powerful in articulating the different permutations of what that could be. We've been using vibe coding tools to put together just a preliminary view or a preliminary app of what a user experience or what a user journey could be, which again, I'm not a designer, but I can use it enough to say, this is my idea. And it starts to get people to understand what you're trying to build. Much further, visuals are very complementary to those words. So it becomes much easier for folks to understand and say, oh, I see what you're doing here. And then they can build on it. So a lot of those tools that we've been bringing in have been incredibly useful. We use it for market sizing, competitive research, market analysis, competitive positioning. I mean, there's so many different things that it just speeds up. And when you're in early stage incubation, it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm not publishing a white paper on this. I'm not putting out some grand research study. I just need signals. I need directional signals of where this can go and what this can be. And so the tools are incredibly useful in helping shape and guide that, and at least give you the signals to know, okay, go in the right direction and keep going.
I love that. So you're using it right at the ideation phase to draw a clearer vision of early stage product thinking. And it is true that's I haven't told anyone this on this podcast, and I've stopped doing it, but it's a similar notion. And you might think I'm a bit weird here. Larissa, I don't know if I've told you this before, but I found that if I had a dream and I explained that dream to an LLM, a graphic, it would produce a visual that was so close to that dream, it was scary, right?
Yeah.
So I started an Instagram thing called My Dream AI.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and then my wife said, "I think you need to get some help because there's something not right here."
Apparently, AI can also be your therapist now too. So
that's the next incarnation of it. But it's a similar thing here in a product world. You have a dream. It's not necessarily a dream that happens when you're sleeping, but it's a dream that you then use to visualize and bring it to life. Yeah. Yep. And then, so tell me, so you used the word there, which I love. And I listened to Joanna Stern on the Wall Street Journal talk about vibe coding, brought to life by Claude Code, where they've really broken through in the enterprise. Have you turned your hand to vibe coding then? Have you used it, put some prompts in and seen what's come back?
I have. And it's fascinating. Again, I'm not a designer. I'm not a developer by trade. It's so incredibly easy to use. It's shocking. And it's actually incredibly satisfying when you bring something to life like that and you have a clickable, interactive prototype that you can start to show off and share. And so it's amazing to really democratize that access to creating software applications, to creating those interactive journeys, which has been, again, absolutely fantastic and not something that I really thought that I would ever figure out how to do. I will say it gets easy to become your own worst enemy. And this is where having training in design principles, user journey principles becomes so important, because you can very quickly overload a vibe code with unnecessary features and start to confuse things. So vibe coding is great to put something out there, but having that expertise is still really valuable to figure out, okay, where do these things go to make it intuitive? How do I make this engaging? How do I continue to increase my engagement in areas that are important to me? So that knowledge, that institutional knowledge, is still very important.
I think, and that's perfect. And the example I used, the Wall Street Journal, she started playing around with the vibe coding with Claude Code. She built a web page. She was all proud of her web page. I think she overloaded it with functionality and features. Then she took it to the software engineers at the Wall Street Journal and said, take a look at this. What is it? And they said, hey, look, it's 80% there.
Yeah.
But there's bugs. And to your point, there's things in here that we need. So whilst it's not eliminating the art of software engineering, or the science rather of software engineering at all, it's certainly supercharging it, right? In a whole way we've never seen before.
100%. And again, I think that's where, to some of what we kind of talked about last time, is what does AI replace? How does it complement sort of the human aspect of that? Again, you still need a human with the idea, with the prompts to shape and to guide. Lovable vibe coding apps like that can build out what you tell it to, but you still need to direct. And so there is still a level of interaction that has to happen. There's still creativity that needs to happen. Sure, the vibe coding apps can recommend other features, but only I can know how to prioritize them or map them to my user requirements. So there is still necessarily decisioning that sits on top of that is going to require that human judgment layer.
Now, the metaphor I read in The Economist this weekend, it was a letter that was sent in, and the gentleman who wrote this letter said, hey, listen, AI allows us to put our foot on a different accelerator, but you still need a human at the steering wheel. Right. Uh-huh. And I thought that was a nice metaphor.
Yeah.
So let's get into sort of more corporate matters now. At Amdocs, we released our earnings last week. We announced our new AOS agentic operating system, all based around AI. What about at AT&T as far as what you can disclose? How is that affecting the culture of the business, your everyday work, and even the demand from consumers in relation to that?
Definitely. So I would say for AT&T, AI is nothing new. Again, like we said, AI is more than ChatGPT. So we've had AI functionality running across our data stores, running at our network layer, AI machine learning models for quite some time. And so that's nothing new to us. What I will say is historically, those algorithms, those models have always been kind of locked within the technical teams. And it was mostly the technical teams who really understood them and really understood what was happening. And so now one of the nice things is the entire company is understanding and paying attention to the power of these models and the power of AI to do all sorts of different things. Again, whether that be productivity or optimization or creation or building, you see a lot more employees starting to pay attention, which is great. And so what AT&T's done is we have our own internal model, Ask AT&T, that all employees use. Within my team, we have additional AI apps, again, that are specific to the product development process that we've been using a lot. So very much you see the whole company aligned around how do we start to look at this differently? How do we look at the way we work differently and how we interact with these tools and with these models in a way that serves the needs of the business, in a way that's smart, trustworthy, secure, all of those things. Most of the enterprise is really aligned around that and starting to pay attention to that. And then I think the next piece is how do we move the models into products, which is still sort of an open frontier, this idea of monetization of AI and what makes sense there and how you productize certain AI capabilities. Some of what we're seeing, kind of like I mentioned earlier, is that there is the consumer perception of AI is mixed. And so in terms of AI is just a tool. It's not anything special of its own. Ultimately, it becomes, what is the customer problem you're trying to solve? And can you use AI to do that better? And so that's what we really try and lead with is, what are the customer problems we want to solve? Oh, by the way, it happens to be powered by AI, again, with privacy, data security, all of the important transparency, auditability, all of those core components. But you have to lead with the customer problem, and then AI just becomes a tool to get there.
Yeah. And it's I think we've gone past the point where, in fact, I don't think I've seen it or heard it anywhere, where consumers are actively seeking AI, right? Like you said, they're looking for their solutions. Oh, and if it's supercharged by AI and it makes things, then that's great, right? But I'm not a consumer saying, hey, I need AI in that before. It reminds me of when, I remember when Bluetooth came out back in the 2000s, and I was in my 20s, and I remember everyone was like, "Does it have Bluetooth? Does that device have Bluetooth?" And then no one really knew what Bluetooth did or how it was going to help you, but they knew it needed Bluetooth. And all the devices with the use cases of Bluetooth didn't come until afterwards, but it seemed like this consumer hygiene factor. By the way, I was at Vodafone at the time, so I was in the service provider world, and it was like almost from a product management perspective, it has to have Bluetooth.
Yes.
We weren't thinking of the use case, but we think it has to have Bluetooth because that's ingrained in the consumer psyche. What we're seeing now is that the word AI is not ingrained in the consumer psyche. It's the outcome that AI will essentially deliver, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think I would say, I think it is ingrained in the psyche, but it's not a must have because most of the consumer facing AI tools are not solving critical problems that people run into daily. Like, it's great that I can use these things to animate my dreams or create goofy visuals of my dog driving a car or something like that, right? Like, that's great fun, but it's not a core problem of mine to solve. And I think that's some of where I think many consumers, and this is very fair, there's a bit of frustration around it. Like, we're spending so much time and it summarizes my email. I can read my own email. Like, I don't need that. So how can we look at AI and use it to really solve true consumer pain points? And that's where I think you'll start to see folks go, okay, that makes sense to me. I don't want it to do my storytelling and my creative pursuits for me. I want to do that for myself. But I would like it to help me manage my calendar or help me just take some of those things off of my plate that frustrate me day in, day out.
And I think, again, going back to your central tenet, your earlier point, AI is more than ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And we talk about things that have happened in the last 3 or 4 weeks with the Claude Code that we talked about, particularly vibe coding and particularly in the enterprise domain. But I think Google I'm a Google Android guy, right?
Yep. Me too.
Oh, you okay? So you're going to know what I'm talking about.
I get yelled at all the time by my iOS friends for being green bubble. It's a whole thing. Oh yeah.
Me and my wife had to go to a marriage counselor because of the iOS Android arguments. But what Google has done, and they've done it quietly with no marketing, with no fanfare. All of a sudden, Gemini is in my watch. It's on my television. It's in my Google Nest. It's in my car. I can just ask it now to dig out an email about what time my son's baseball practice is. It will go and find it. It is from nowhere now embedded into everything in my life. Even on the television, I turn the television on now and out of nowhere it says, "Welcome to Gemini TV." I'm like, okay, so you're now in the television. And again, they haven't marketed this big fanfare. The use cases are just there by discovery, but it's an amazing job as far as ingraining it in. Hats off to them, to be honest. Now, you're seeing that as well, Stephanie, as an Android person. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. But again, what I would say is for folks who, to some extent, it's like, did I sign up for this? Like, did I ask for this?
No.
Which again I think it just comes down to this whole idea of choice and control and how are we interacting with these tools and is it adding value to us? If it's suddenly embedded in my speakers and it's like, I don't know if I asked for that and I don't know how to use that could be a turnoff to some. And I think that's where it becomes really important for brands to think about how are they rolling these things out and how are they talking about them or not in the right ways.
Yeah, no, that's a really, really, really good point. I got excited about it because I'm in technology, but I could imagine other people say, "Hey, what happened to my old Google Assistant? Why is it now called Gemini? And how did this happen?" You know,
exactly.
That is a really good point. That is a really good point.
We're early adopters, so of course we'll love that kind of stuff. But
we're early adopters, yeah. I always gravitate to it, and like when I turn around and say, "Hey, look," to like the kids and there's Geminis in the TV. They're like,
exactly.
Can you go back to your dream AI thing, please? But again, another thing that I'm observing is it was just last night. My 11-year-old daughter was doing her English homework. She was doing a comprehension exercise based on a book. And she was there, she was writing, she had her phone open, and she was just asking it questions. She wasn't asking the generative AI to write it for her or shortcut. She was saying, hey, but did Sophie really think that the cat had 6 superpowers? And she was just bouncing these ideas off it. And then, so I think even the way that we used to have digital natives, but some children are AI natives now.
Yeah.
And they're already conditioned to thinking, I can't abdicate everything I'm doing to this tool, but it is allowed to help me. And I witnessed that, and it was a moment of, oh, that's pretty cool.
And that's fantastic. And I agree. I think there's 2 sides of it, and they will be at odds and they will be at tension. But, one of the newsletter I was reading this morning was talking about how there's slop, AI slop, all sorts of that. It's free, it's everywhere. But at the same time, there's a lot of incredible, free, knowledgeable content. There are ways to engage, ways to think critically. And so we have this polarization or this tension of both things being true. And so it's really on us. And I'm so glad to see the younger generation starting to understand, okay, I have the responsibility here, but here's how I use this, because it really can be an incredible tool when used in the right way.
We get now into what we had a really great conversation about in Barcelona, storytelling.
Yeah.
And when we were recording that season and the season before it, we focused very much on storytelling.
Yep.
And could AI atrophy the senses required for effective storytelling? And then we've looked at it some more, and I've written a whole bunch of stuff on it. And give me your thoughts 12 months on the effects, positive or negative, of the human narrative in relation to this technology.
Yeah. So I would say, sort of to what I was kind of talking about before, I think AI is going to flood us with more stories. And I use that in quotes. There's going to be more content out there, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be better quality content. And so I think there is going to be a reaction. And I think we are starting to see this even among some of the AI skeptics. There's a reaction to, no, human first is what I want. I want human first storytelling. I want human first creativity. I really desire that because it comes with a level of authenticity, a level of depth that you're just not quite seeing with the AI tools. And so I think to a large part, we're going to continue to crave that. And we may even start to crave that type of connection more when we see so much more AI and AI generated content around us. And it's not to say AI generated content isn't going to be entertaining. There might be some stuff that actually is like, oh, that's kind of a good song or kind of a funny movie, or so there might still be stuff that sticks. It's not going to be all terrible, but I think we will continue to desire a deeper connection with, again, human generated content, creativity, and stories.
And I see it, and Larissa's heard this in every single episode we've recorded this season. Even now, when people are taking to LinkedIn or Facebook, they've become they're abdicating their authorship. It's obvious, it's clear, it's visual.
Mm-hmm. And what I would say to that, I think that's where it is. I would like to say there should be kind of a collective call to action of how do we retain control of our stories. And I would love it if less people abdicated their storytelling entirely to AI. You can use AI to help you. I use AI to help me all the time, but I still edit it. It's still in my tone of voice. It's still my story. And so I would love to see less people just completely delegate those tasks and retain that and retain the connections and the communications more, because it is going to be and continues to be so important.
I listened to a podcast recently, and I can't remember what the podcast was or who they were interviewed, but I remember this point that stuck with me. That the podcast interviewer said to the writer, "So how long did it take you to write this book?" He said, "It took me 12 months." And he said to him, "Did you use generative AI?" He said, "I'm not going to lie to you, I did." And he said, "Really?" He said, "I did." He said, "I'm not going to lie to you. And he said, and I will continue to use it beyond this book. And the guy, the interviewers basically said, well, what were you using it for? Because I can sense the authenticity and the lived in experiences that feature in your book. He said, I use it for localization and customization. So if this book is being published now in France, I can use generative AI to give it a French cultural spin, obviously language aside. So he was using it and in some countries we're targeting different demographics. So I can use generative AI to rewrite it for that demographic or point out certain elements that I need to rewrite. And I thought that was really interesting. So the essence of it remains human, but the pieces around it that need to be tweaked for the audience can be done by AI,
which is great. And again, another great use case of here is, I presume, a compelling story that wants an audience. And so how can AI just make it even more likely that the intended audience is able to access and receive that story?
Every story stands the test of time, but then is adapted for the audience that it's. Romeo and Juliet is the great example. So my daughter is reading Romeo and Juliet at school right now, and she comes back, she goes, I don't understand any of this Shakespearean English. And I was like, well, it's the most wonderful English that you could. But she's like, I don't get any of it. I don't know what they're saying. And then she watched the Romeo and Juliet movie by Baz Luhrmann, the one with Leonardo DiCaprio and Claire Danes.
Oh, I love that one.
I love that movie. I love it. Even that, because it had been brought into a modern context and localized for her.
But they still use the traditional language. It's not like they modernize the text at all. Yeah. Yes.
That's a great point. The vernacular is exactly the same, but because it's put in a more modern, she could understand it, right? We had an education specialist on, and we were talking about how generative AI in education localizes the education technique for that individual. So for some kids, learning physics using metaphors and analogies of basketball help them absorb it. So it's a similar thing with the literature. You don't change the core literature, but the setting and the context can be adapted to.
Absolutely. Yep.
And
even more to that example, again, it's delivered by actors. It's delivered by humans. And so you can't take away that meaning that they put on top of it, the emotion. I even think about, I lived overseas for a time. And so when you don't know the language, it's actually surprising how much you can understand someone, even if you don't know the language, just from facial expression, body language, context, connection, all of those things, which you strip the language off of it and we're still having a conversation. And so again, those are uniquely human things that is it's just, I don't believe is going to be replaced. And I believe that we're going to, as humans, continue to crave that more and more.
I love that example. I think that's a brilliant example because it's so true. Even though the tools are there when we go overseas now, to be able to have a real-time translated conversation, we tend not to use them. You tend to still be able to
figure it out. Yeah.
Figure it out. I like that. That's really cool. So are you heading to Barcelona this year, Stephanie? Will you be there?
I will not be heading to Barcelona this year. No, I will be holding it down here in Dallas, trying to ideate new products and deliver new capabilities. So
all right. And I'm not going to ask, I know it's top secret what you're working on right now, so I won't ask you, but do you find as well, if we think about before AI, and let's be clear about this, and you mentioned it, AI is nothing new, but the concept of generative AI sort of caused this hype. But prior to that, everyone was getting all excited about the metaverse, and that never really came. But then obviously 5G monetization and all the use cases that we saw with 5G, and all that investment that went into 5G and all those things that we once talked about excitedly, like driverless cars and all these things that still not quite there. The AI talk and has kind of masked those things. Mm-hmm. And now we're even looking into 6G. So is that very much a focus in your world now, what 6G will look like and what it can deliver?
So I think all of the examples that you laid out, the metaverse, 5G monetization, AI, even moving into 6G, I think the ones that we've seen as a telco industry, we've led with the technology. We haven't led with the customer problem.
Story.
Right.
Yeah.
Or the story. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, even the metaverse. I mean, we never came up with a compelling reason to go to the metaverse. Why do I need that? I don't have a need for that. 5G monetization, it was, well, 5G is faster. And we just never really put those pieces together. So when it comes to 6G, I'm certainly very interested in the type of capabilities that will be there that I can use as a product owner to use as building blocks to build more tech. But before we go in on that capital investment, I think we need to figure out what is it truly going to be used for, and how do we get the return on it? And how do we make sure that we are serving customer needs and customers where they're at, as opposed to just saying, hey, we spent all this money on technology, use it now. Really needs to be driven from how are they going through the world and what are their needs?
No, and I think it's true, exactly to what you said. 5G, the lack of storytelling in 5G, ultimately, I think, is why it wasn't deemed as successful as it should, because it became about speeds, feeds, latency, coverage. It became an arms race, right? And as opposed to saying, well, what is it going to do in my everyday world to fix anything? And I think with 6G, there's a chance to rectify that, right?
I agree. Yep, I agree. Yeah. And I think as an industry, we get very used to our technical terminology, and we get very excited and happy about our standards and deployments and all of that. But sometimes we forget who the audience is and really what story we should be telling.
Mm-hmm. No, it's a really interesting point. And again, I'm interested as well. I'll be interested about maybe a month afterwards, once I decompress from Barcelona. What recover. The key? I think it's all going to be AI again, of course, but we'll have to see. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm conscious of time. Now, we've done this before, Stephanie. We do our little segment called TGI Story Time, and we've in the last 10-15 minutes ago or so, we've talked about story time. Now, the challenge we lay down to our guests is tell us a story that has had a profound impact on your life. And people tell us stories about something their parents told them, or a TV advert, or a song, or a poem, or something like that. But we've already done that with you, right? So we've already gone through that exercise. So there's a slight twist on this, okay? We haven't had to do this before, so hopefully this makes sense. Where have you told somebody a story that has had a profound impact on their life that you can recall? It's a tricky one. TGI Storytime.
I don't know if this quite counts, but I guess I will count it. Again, I believe the last time we talked about stories that my parents had told me and what that had instilled in me, and sort of how I was able to how I used that to inform my decisions, all of that. But I think on the reverse side is a little bit of how I influenced my parents and sort of the way that they saw me behave and how that changed. And so what I would say is when I was finishing up undergrad, I decided that I was going to join the Peace Corps. And so I spent 3 years living in the Peace Corps, and my parents had never left the country, and so they wanted to come visit me. I was in Azerbaijan. I said,
oh, wow.
First time you leave America, you're not going to Azerbaijan. I'll meet you in Turkey. So we met in Turkey. Yeah. And then 6 months later, my dad calls me up and says, hey, I have the opportunity to go move to Abu Dhabi and be an air traffic controller in Abu Dhabi. Your mom and I are gonna go. And so my parents ended up living overseas in Dubai for 3 years. And it was something that I had never thought that they would do, but I think they saw me get up and leave the country and have a wild experience. They were like, okay, we can do that too. So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's really cool. That's really cool.
Yeah.
No, I mean, but that's a really great one, because I think traveling and leaving your comfort zone is not something you even think about till you see somebody else do it, right? And particularly somebody you know in your family.
Yes. And you see that it's safe and manageable and not scary, and like, okay, we can do this, and that there's experiences to be had, and different people and different cultures to meet and understand, and it can just be a beautiful thing. But sometimes you need a little push or a little example first.
I love that story. I think that's great. I think that's really good. And I have something similar. It was when I moved here to Canada from the UK. It was similar. I'd seen family members and friends to expatriate, and I thought, now's the time to do that adventure.
Yeah.
It's just that COVID happened, and then I never went home, and I'm still here.
Yeah, stuff. There are worse things.
Wonderful. And you said you were planning a trip. Where are you headed then? You were planning a trip using.
So I'll be headed to Paris in March.
Very nice.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Have you been to Paris before?
I have been to Paris before, but I'll be out there with a couple of friends. So my friend and I are flying from the States, and then we've got some friends in Munich who are going to meet us in Paris. So we're just going to hang out for a week and enjoy the city.
Nice. Yeah. Paris was the first place I ever traveled on business. When I was left university, they sent me to Paris.
Wow.
And therefore I have very fond memories of Paris. And then I'll tell you about my family connections another time. I was telling Larissa. So we finish with one last thing, and you'll remember this one. It's our TGI to go round, our quick fire round. Random questions. I'm going to blame Larissa for the questions. She came up with them, but I think they're pretty relevant. Let's start TGI to go. TGI to go. So Stephanie, question 1, cats or dogs?
Both, but I do have a dog right now, so I have to say dog.
What sort of dog do you have, Stephanie?
I call him a purebred mutt. He's 40 pounds. His name is Bruce. He's an absolute lunatic, but he's wonderful. My bestie. My bestie's here right now. He's a King Charles. He's sleeping. I don't want to wake him up. But I'm a dog guy. Always had dogs, and they are your best friend. Oh yeah.
Now you live in Dallas. So this question may or may not be relevant. But are you from Dallas originally?
I'm not. No.
Okay.
Nope. I grew up in Ohio, and then I've lived in quite a few different cities before landing in Dallas about 8 or 9 years ago.
Okay. So this question, Yankees or the Red Sox?
Yankees.
Yeah.
I went to undergrad at NYU, and then I went to grad school at Boston University. And I was actually in Boston when the Red Sox won the World Series. But Yankees were just New York. It just clicked.
Awesome. Great.
Yep.
Now, the next one is actually, we talked about this in the conversation, and some good foresight from Larissa. She must have known the conversation was going to go this way. But Hamlet or Romeo and Juliet?
Hamlet, hands down. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely love everything about that play. I actually got to perform in it when I was in college, and I have always adored it. It never gets old. There's so many layers to it, so much you can unpack. So Hamlet all the way.
It's amazing, isn't it? Because some storytelling just does not age. And Shakespeare is the original bard storyteller. And to see my kids reading Romeo and Juliet now, and like I said, they only really kind of understood it when they saw the Baz Luhrmann movie, but it is timeless in a lot of respects.
So many of the themes, even when we think about the kinds of words or sort of colloquialisms that Shakespeare invented that are suddenly just part of our common language, he was so ahead of his time in that way. It was amazing.
But that's another thing now that generative AI can't do, in that when you read Shakespeare in its original format, you get transformed not into just a different story, but into a different time and into a different vernacular and a different world almost. I'm reading to my son every evening right now the C.S. Lewis Chronicles of Narnia books. And the English in that is very post-war, very... I don't know what the word is, empirical English, but reading it to my son takes me back to how my grandmother used to speak and talk. The form of the language isn't just the story or the way what it's conveying. It's also taking you into a cultural place, right?
There's tone, there's word choice, there's so much to it. And I think back to Tolkien. I mean, I was a huge Lord of the Rings fan. And so thinking about even just how Tolkien was able to create different tones for each of the characters of Middle Earth, and even just different languages. So they all had their own nuanced way of speaking. It's a level of sophistication in writing that I think is, again, not impossible for AI to do, but I just don't see it being quite as compelling or consistent or impactful.
Or even to the word you used before, authentic, because sometimes in the early days, I would get ChatGPT to write an invite to a birthday party or something, and then mess around and say, "Oh, give it me like Yoda would say it," or do it like, and it would try, but you kind of never. But it's that authenticity in that language, I think, that's really, really rich as well. Yeah. Okay, here's another one: Texas chili, you're in Dallas, or New England clam chowder, you were in Boston. Which one would you prefer?
New England clam chowder.
Okay.
I also, again, living in Texas, but growing up in Ohio, we put beans in our chili. And in Texas, that's like blasphemy. So there's very specific requirements around Texas chili that I just don't entirely understand. So I'll stick with the clam chowder.
That's good. Now, are you an Instagram final question by that? Are you an Instagram person or a TikTok person?
Instagram. I had TikTok for like a week. And somehow, I don't know how to say this, like I couldn't figure it out. Like I would see these videos and then I would flip and I was like, what am I watching? And I just couldn't quite get into it. And I'm kind of happy that happened. So I uninstalled it and that was the end of it. But
I did exactly the same. And then I picked up Instagram and the reels made more sense to me somehow. You know? It's
true. Yes. And Instagram is where I discover all of my local things to do and new restaurants and stuff like that. So I do have a bit of an Instagram addiction still. But
but I know Facebook revenues were up 24% last week. Yeah. But Instagram's advertising algorithm has me, Stephanie.
Oh, it's too good.
I am buying things I really do not want or need every day. Honestly.
Oh, yeah.
There's examples all around me. And I'm like, why did I buy that? The algorithm hit me at the right time, at the right place.
When the package shows up and you're like, what did I buy?
The package shows up. I don't even remember buying it. And I'm like, how in the name? Anyway, it gets me into a lot of trouble with my wife, that Instagram shopping algorithm. There's some Adidas shorts that arrived, right? And they kept hitting me with these Adidas shorts, and I bought them. And no slur on Adidas. I hope nobody from Adidas listens to the podcast, but they're horrendous. But I will never wear them ever. But they got me. It got me with the album. Fair play.
Well, that'll just be something to know when you get your own AI agent. Just don't give it your credit card or access to your Instagram.
Exactly. That's a great point. That's my tip for the day. Honestly. We're out of time. It's been a pleasure catching up with you, Stephanie, after a year. It feels like yesterday we were in Barcelona chatting. Is there any last thoughts you'd like to leave our listeners with before we sign off today?
I would just say that, again, there's going to be a lot of different and a lot of changes coming and conversations around AI in all sorts of different ways. And so just continue to encourage people to pay attention and control the things that you can control, which is that authenticity and not delegating your creativity, not delegating the thing that makes you unique. Retain that, hold on to that, because I think that is going to be something that we're all going to be in need of in the future.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you very much, Stephanie. It's been a pleasure.
Of course.
So thank you, Stephanie. It's fantastic to have you on the show again. Really, I always really enjoy our conversations, and I can't wait to have you back, basically. So thank you to everyone for listening today. Please leave a review or a rating. It certainly helps us. Please subscribe as well. You will find all our back episodes, over 100 and I don't know now, a lot, available on all good podcast channels, as they are also available on our webpage, amdocs.com/the great indoors, which also features on that webpage a whole slew of other assets related to the series. Also, please check out my Substack, Matsky Rob. The Substack is called The Last Bastion. If you really want to know about the history of the podcast and the guests we've had on, it's well worth a read. And it's free. I don't charge anybody because I'm a nice guy. Anyway, we're off to Barcelona to record season 12. That's where we're heading this week. So I look forward to speaking to you very soon. Some great guests coming on in Barcelona again. So stay tuned. And with that, I'm Matthew Roberts in Toronto for Amdocs, and have a great day wherever you are.